and I did my research paper on the extinction of mammoths. And the purpose of this research paper was to get a better understanding of why we think the mammoths went extinct. So let's begin. So let's start with a little bit of a background on the woolly mammoth. Now, the scientific name of the woolly mammoth is Mammoth primigenius. So just so you know, as throughout this presentation, I will be saying mammoth, but I am always referring to the woolly mammoth. That was the main character for this research, was the woolly mammoth, Mammoth primigenius. So mammoths look a lot like elephants. However, they have smaller skulls, smaller ears, and shorter tails. And then there's the obvious, they are covered in fur. They are related to modern day elephants. And so are these little guys. Anyways, there was a research project that was done by Evgeny Rogaev and Yuri Molyaka, and they found this frozen leg of a mammoth, an entire frozen leg, and they were able to pull out a mitochondrial DNA from its muscle, and it was the longest mitochondrial DNA anybody has been able to get out of a mammoth. It was 16,842 base pairs long. And because it was so long, they were able to read back and find out that the mammoths are more closely related to Asian elephants. Their connection goes back about 4 million years. That's about when the split off was, but they are more closely related to the Asian than the African elephants, interestingly enough. So mammoths are found in various parts of the world, but they are more concentratedly found in areas like Siberia, Russia, Northern Asia, North America, kind of places that were cooler climates long ago. And, could be cold now. But through all the research that I did, a lot of mammoths were found in Siberia. So if you really want to go and find a mammoth, you will have better luck in Siberia than anywhere else. So there are a few ideas that, as I did my research, that we think are the reasons for mammoths being extinct. And the first idea that we're going to discuss is humans. So humans were alive about the same time, they were alive at the same time as mammoths, near the end of the mammoth's lifetime. Humans started appearing at the end of the Pleistocene epoch, and mammoths were still on the earth at that time, and so they started running into each other. So could humans be the reason for their extinction? Well, it's a possibility. Excuse me. Humans were new to mammoths, and the mammoths weren't really used to being hunted by humans or the humans' hunting techniques. It was all new to mammoths. And we have a lot of archaeological evidence to show that humans were well equipped with killing weapons that could have easily killed large mammals such as mammoths. However, for humans to drive mammoths to extinction, one mammoth needed to be killed every 3 years by each human in its habitat for the humans to kill them off, and that would have taken them 6,000 years. So if overkilling by humans were to have been the reason for extinction, it would have taken 6,000 years. So it wasn't just an abrupt extinction like we think of mass extinctions generally are. It was a little bit slower. I mean, 6,000 years really isn't a lot, but it kind of is a lot. But humans and overkilling is a possibility. Another possibility for their extinction is climate change. Now, mammoths typically lived in cooler climates, and by cooler I mean really cold climates, hence the full body of fur. They could withstand very cold temperatures. They also ate grass-like vegetation and plants that grew on the ground. That's more the climate that they lived in. So if the climate were to change, could that be the reason for the extinction? That is also a possibility. As the weather grew warmer, it melted the ice, and that was their way of getting around from not only from place to place, but from continent to continent. There was this place called the permafrost that they would travel on. And as the climate changed and grew warmer, it melted the permafrost. And that would trap them on continents and islands. And as they became trapped on these continents and islands, they weren't able to have a whole lot of gene variation, and the genetic diversity became low. And if you remember learning about this, when there's a low genetic diversity, that leads to a lot of accumulated deleterious mutations or harmful mutations. And so that kind of just leads down to the slippery slope of the extinction vortex. Along with the weather growing warmer and melting the ice, it also began to be the cause for growth in forests. And where that's good for some animals, it wasn't so good for the mammoth, because as the forests grew, it would kill off their main source of food, mainly the grass-like vegetation and the plants. There wasn't room for both of those plants and the giant trees. And so with the food disappearing, genetic variation decreasing, and mammoths not being able to get very far, that is a possibility of their extinction. However, we've seen a lot of climate change in the past, and before, mammoths were able to adjust and to adapt to the climate change. And so all of a sudden having this new climate change being the reason for them to be extinct is not very reasonable, but it is still a possibility. It could have been a more drastic of a climate change than the mammoths were used to, but who knows? So the third cause of extinction that we're thinking is that there was a meteor, or a bunch of meteors, who knows, that came to Earth and killed the mammoths off. So just so that we are on the same page, a meteor is a giant rock or something of the sort from space, and it's actually a meteoroid in space. But once it passes through Earth's atmosphere, it becomes a meteor. And so we actually often see meteors; they're shooting stars. Anyways, I digress. The meteor, once it hits the Earth, if it's small, it can cause a dent. But if it's huge, it can cause a lot of destruction. And like this picture looks like it's going to. So could a meteor be a cause for their extinction? Well, that is also a possibility. There has been found a black layer that has been on top of a lot of fossils of mammoths, but not just the mammoths, but other mammals that went extinct about the same time, like the giant sloth or the mastodon. And this black layer they have found was made mostly of charred wood and like charred algae, something that resembles being burnt, like there was a giant fire or something, or a lot of heat. Another reason for believing that there was a meteor that hit the Earth was through the reading of ice cores. Now, if you remember learning about ice cores, they are very detailed in the seasons of that time period. And so we have looked back to about 12,000 years ago. There was a specific meteor that mainly affected North America, and that's what the biggest one that we've had in our most recent history that we're looking at. And when we look back at the ice cores of back then, it shows that at about the same time period as the black layer, there were high levels of ammonium and nitrate, which is related to cosmic output. And then along with the ice cores and the black layer, there's also been some extraterrestrial material found on the Earth that has also dated back to the same time period as those ice cores and the black layer, materials like sephirols that are found at impact. And that's a picture of what sephirols look like. And what sephirols are, they are pieces of stone that are heated up to extreme heats, but then cooled off really fast. And that usually only happens with impact of something like a volcano or a meteor. And as they did more studies on these sephirols, they were able to discover that it was not a volcano that made these, it was something more. However, like I mentioned, this meteor, the specific meteor, only affected North America. And so it couldn't have affected all of the mammoths all throughout the world, like in Siberia and Northern Asia and Russia, only the ones in North America. So we have all these ideas. Which one was the cause of the extinction? I'm thinking that although all of these are possibilities and they are good ideas, it seems unlikely that just one of them could be the answer because, yes, there were humans on the earth. Yes, they had some weapons that were deadly and mammoths weren't used to, but if they were to drive the mammoths to extinction, it would have taken them 6,000 years to do so. And it would have just taken them too long, and they would have, it doesn't work in my mind that it would just be the humans to be the cause for extinction. And then there's the weather, and weather is a huge thing. If it changes a little bit, it throws things off a lot, and it either animals need to adapt to the new weather or they die. And that could be the case. However, we've seen in the past that there have been other climate changes that mammoths were able to adapt to. So why was this climate change all of a sudden the one that they could not adapt to? And then there's a meteor. The meteor would be a very valid explanation for the mammoths in North America, but like I said, there's mammoths found in other places than just North America. And so what about those mammoths? There weren't meteors all over the place, just that affected the mammoths as far as we can tell. We've only found one in North America that could have affected them. So could it be a combination of all of them? That is more of what I'm thinking. Because with the combination of hunters and their hunting styles being new to mammoths and the stresses of climate change and needing to adapt to this new climate and these extreme temperatures, and then having a meteor hit, all of those stresses coming on them all at the same time, that could be, I would think, a reason for extinction, is all of those reasons. And I mean, especially in North America with the meteor, but in like Northern Asia and Russia and Siberia that weren't affected by the meteor, still the climate change and the humans together could do enough damage that could lead them to extinction. So it could be one of those, although it's highly unlikely that it's just one of those. But combining the ideas and the possibilities, that seems more like a likely answer to me of how they were extinct. So as far as we know, the mammoths did not live that long ago. Humans were alive when mammoths were alive, and that is so cool to me, I think. And yet we're still unsure of how exactly they became extinct, but we do have a few ideas that we've narrowed it down to, them being humans and their overkilling, climate change, and the possibility of the meteor or even several meteors. And in doing the research and studying all of the arguments for each of these ideas, it just doesn't seem likely that it's just one of them. It would be more likely that it's a combination of two or even all three of them. And here are my references. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you learned something new and fascinating about mammoths.